Hi everyone, and welcome to a little prerequisite lesson on completing the square before we start Unit 5. Completing the square is something that you talked about in Algebra 2. We also talked about with circles and geometry, and as we head into circles and other conic sections, we want to review that skill. Now, in order to complete the square, you're always going to add a C value that makes these trinomials factorable. And that value is always going to be your B term, so in this case 6, and we're always going to divide that value by 2. And then we're going to square that value to get our value of C. Okay, and this will make this factorable because then x squared plus 6x plus 9, what multiplies to be 9 adds to be 6. Well, that's going to be 3 and 3. So instead of writing x plus 3 and x plus 3, we'll just write x plus 3 quantity squared. Okay. Now, from there, we're always going to be able to then, if we need to, solve for different values. This is where you would have used completing the square in Algebra 2. So to start, you always want to move over the value without a variable. I like to say it's getting kicked out of the party, right? We're adding 51 to the other side. Now what we're going to do is we are going to find that C value that is going to make the left-hand side factorable. Now, because this is an equation, that equal sign means whatever you add to the left, you also need to add to the right. And that value that we're adding on is going to be that B value divided by 2 and then squared. So in both blanks, we're going to put 49. Now, to factor this then, what multiplies to be 49 adds to be 14? Well, what you're going to notice, it's that value you got when you divided by 2, x plus 7 and x plus 7, better known as x plus 7 quantity squared, and then 49 plus 51 is 100. Now, to finish solving for x, we would square root both sides of this. We would end up with x plus 7 and then equals plus or minus the square root of 100, which is 10. So x is going to equal positive 10 minus 7 when we subtract the 7 over for a value of 3, or it's going to equal negative 10 minus 7 when we subtract that 7 over, which would be negative 17. So these would be your two values if you were solving. Now for this class, what we're going to want to do a lot of is going to complete the square so that it's in the formation of a circle, which we'll talk more about in the next lesson. And this is something you actually covered back in geometry, but in order to put this in the standard equation for a circle, you're going to kind of complete the square twice with the x squareds and the y squareds, okay? So we're going to adjust this so that all the x's are together and we want all of the y's together. So I'm going to have to bring this 14y back to the other side through subtraction. But I'm still going to leave that constant on the other side. Think about it like it is a party and your invitation is a variable. So negative 107 has to stay on the other side of the equal sign, can't get in the party. Now, when we complete the square, we're going to complete the square for both the x's and the y's to get both pieces factorable. Okay, so add on to both sides now, which means since we're adding two things to the left, we'll add two things to the right as well. So we're going to take that b value for each, negative 22, divide that by 2, get negative 11. Any negative value squared, though, is a positive. So notice where I was adding the positive. Even though it was negative 11, squared positive. Same idea now with the y values. We have negative 14 divided by 2. It's negative 7. Squared again, even though it's negative, any negative number squared, we get a positive. Okay. So on the right-hand side, as we look to factor, okay, what multiplies to be positive 121 but adds to be negative 22? Again, the shortcut is using that value you got inside of your parentheses, negative 11 and negative 11, negative 11, x minus 11 quantity squared. And then same thing with the y's, plus sign in here. What multiplies be 49 adds to be negative 14. Well, again, it's kind of a shortcut here, negative 7 and negative 7. So y minus 7 quantity squared. And on the right-hand side, when we add together negative 107, 121, and 49, we get 63. Okay. And we'll talk more about this in the next lesson, what more we're going to do with this. But for now, we'll just leave our answer like so. Okay. One last example, and this is going to occur when our x and our y here have coefficients on front of them. And again, it's going to still start by bringing everything with a variable to one side. So the 4x squared and the 36x are going to stay together. We know we'll add something to it eventually. Now the 4y is going to have to move over to the other side. It's going to now become positive 4y squared. We add it over. And we're going to have to move the 104y through subtraction over as well. That'll also get completed in the square. Now, 741, on the other hand, is a constant, right? So we're going to subtract that to the other side. And then we'll also be adding, just like we added 2 blanks to the left, we'll have to add 2 blanks to the right to keep this equation equal. Okay. Now, before we get started here, we are going to want to factor out this 4 from both pieces here. So we have 4x squared, and then plus 9x plus a blank. And then same thing over here. We have a 4 is factorable out over on this other side. So we have y squared minus 26y. And again, then we have a blank. And then on the other side, again, we'll be adding some stuff over. So just keep track of that. Now, when we complete the square, divide this by 2. End up with 4.5. But we're going to square that. So we get 20.25. Now, when we add this to the other side, you have to be careful. We're not just adding 20.25, we're adding 20.25 times 4, since we officially have that factored out. So this is now 81. And over here, when we start to complete the square, we're going to divide negative 26 by 2, get negative 13. Squared is 169. But again, we need to multiply that value by the value that we factored out, because really this is 676 when we multiply that by 4. That's what's actually on this other side because of the factoring. Okay. Now, to keep this going then, we still have this 4 out here. We're going to have the x plus 4.5 quantity squared. Multiplies to be 20.25, adds to be 9. And then we still have the 4 out here. Y minus 13 multiplies to be negative, or positive 169, adds to be negative 26. And then negative 741 plus 81 plus 676 is 16. Okay. Last but not least, we can divide all of these by a 4, right? And we finally have x plus 4.5 quantity squared plus y minus 13 quantity squared equals 4. Okay, and there's a little review of completing the square. We will work more with these in class on Monday.